issue. Joining us is Yohan Benizri, president of the Belgian Federation of Jewish Organizations, speaking to us from Brussels. And we also have with us Hannah Shine, Senior Director of Investigations for PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, joining us from Norfolk, Virginia. Hannah, because your side is the more proactive one here, I want to start by asking you, why should governments effectively be ruling out or banning kosher slaughter, a religious practice that dates back for thousands of years?
Well, from PETA's perspective, all animal slaughter is cruel, and we wouldn't necessarily single out kosher slaughter from the others, but we would advocate that until we can convince people to consider the animal's perspective and to eat all the wonderful mock meats, including Beyond Burgers and things like that, until that time, we would advocate that not for a ban of shechita, but for immediate post-cut stunning to mitigate any suffering.
Okay, I do want to point out, though, that does, and I made the point, effectively eliminate kosher killing of animals. And, Yohan, I want to get your response to that. So she's saying it's an ethical stance for or a humane stance towards the killing of animals.
I understand the concern, and I would like to reiterate that it's not about Jews being against animal welfare, quite the contrary. But my reaction to the point of advocating against shechita, and our customs is that, banning a multi-millennial practice just for the sake of the last couple of minutes of an animal that came into being only to become our food does not advance animal welfare. It would advance animal welfare to talk about transport. It would, advance animal welfare to talk about the stress, the undue stress that is imposed on those animals. And I would advocate with you. What I don't get is that hunting is acceptable. The corrida is acceptable, but kosher slaughtering, no.
Right. Well, Hannah, let me get your response, because the problem is that when when Yohan says and shechita is kosher slaughter of animals, when you pass regulations that effectively eliminate that process, but governments continue to allow, for example, hunting, it does look like that is a selective process that could be called religious discrimination.
I absolutely agree. Hunting should be outlawed. Pigeon racing, which is a Belgian national pastime, should absolutely be outlawed. It's cruel as anything else. We're not the ones who are behind these religious slaughter bans at all.
No, but but are you then calling the question I'm asking? But you are advocating this particular point. So I'm asking you then: are you against Belgium passing, or other countries, or even in the U.S., passing these regulations that demand the stunning of animals while there is this sort of a selective process underway?
No, that's not what PETA has been pushing at all. What we do is we have a kind of a two-pronged advocacy strategy. One is until we've convinced people to change their hearts and minds about eating animals. The other strategy is our undercover investigations, which I have personally done in 5 continents. Is where we show people exactly what they're consuming, exactly how anything that they purchase is produced. And so what we've seen again and again in investigations in kosher slaughter plants on multiple continents is that when you have, and this is, both kinds of slaughter can have problems. I mean, even in the most ideal situations where, let's say Dr. Temple Grandin, who audits kosher slaughter plants, the passing rate is for 90% of the cattle to come unconscious within 30 seconds. To that cow, 30 seconds is a long time. And I absolutely agree with my colleague here who is pointing out that the transport is cruel, the farming is cruel, the handling is cruel. I mean, every plant we've been to, we've seen electric prodding consistently with cow after cow, the enormous stress of seeing, smelling, and hearing, other cows being slaughtered. So the cut itself is such a small part of the intense sequence of cruelty that our aim is not to pursue legislation. What we do is work behind the scenes. We meet with kosher certifiers, we meet with experts, And we meet with slaughterhouses even. We met with Agristar, the company that bought agri-processors after they went out of business after their multiple scandals. And they accepted 6 of our 7 recommendations to make their processes less cruel. So we're not the group that's out there pursuing any kind of legislative or political bans of particular kinds of slaughter.
No, but the question is whether kosher slaughter is an inhumane practice that governments should be banning. That is, I think, the question. That I understand what Peter's position, but that is the issue. There are governments now, such as Belgium, that are effectively ending that, and that is a problem for the Orthodox Jewish community. But, Yohan, I want to give you a chance to respond to some of the points that Hannah were raised, and also have to also be admitted that in some cases there are investigations that have found problems in the kosher slaughter process. I'm particularly thinking of some cases in the United States, for example.
Of course, but I only have one suggestion. Why not join forces and, do away with the hypocrisy and the banning of shechita and work together towards animal welfare? But at least, try to help us a little bit, because in this instance, if animal welfare groups do not understand that this is not acceptable to just single out the cut itself and effectively reducing the supply of kosher meat while allowing animals to be born only to be slaughtered, there's a problem also with animal welfare groups. That's my only point. I have a suggestion. Let's work together.
Okay, Hannah, so the point Yohan is making is that in effect, by allowing these regulations to pass, for example, Belgium's new regulation, that is hurting the animal rights organizations because it's making them appear as they are you could argue, supporting religious discrimination because of this is one issue is being singled out. So how do you respond that even if Peter's not pushing for that, they should actually be coming out against such regulation?
Well, I mean, you can just look at our record. We have always tried to mitigate the worst practices of all slaughter, including kosher slaughter, and have not singled out kosher slaughter. You can't look at animal rights groups as a monolithic worldwide, coalition. We all have our own ways of doing things, and we absolutely are for human rights, animal rights, religious freedom. And we want to just make sure that while people are still slaughtering animals, that they're doing it in the least cruel way possible. So, like I said, we're not the ones.
No, but Peter's position is that kosher slaughter that does not involve stunning of the animals, that is an inhumane practice. Is that not one of the positions that Peter has?
I would say our position is that all slaughter is inhumane, but in order to mitigate any prolonged suffering from the fact that many cattle do not become insensible, because if you think about the language about, it's not instantaneous. And while you can have botched slaughters either way, one way that would mitigate that at least 5 countries that I know of do is post-cut stunning. And just let me explain. What we have seen at investigation after investigation is that after the shechita cut, workers are then allowed to conduct other procedures on the cattle because they're technically religiously dead at that point. So what we have seen is, for example, in South America, hoisting, or in the U.S., in anyone who uses a rotating pen, rotating the pen back right side up, dumping the animal out. These plants are not waiting till the animals become unconscious. So we've seen them cut into the animals' heads, right. Stab them in the back of the head to immobilize them by it's called a puntilla, to hit them in the spine so they stop struggling so workers can start cutting them apart. We see that in every plant.
Not the point, is it?
No, but
upright slaughter. So post-cut stunning, why would a blow from a captive bolt gun be any different than all the other horrible things that we're doing to cows after the slaughter cut? How would that? It would a way that you're doing it in a way to mitigate suffering.
I want to give Yohan a chance to respond.
I just wanted to say that it's not the point. Here, we're not talking about only post-cut stunning. We're talking about reversible stunning where the animal will be teref, so it wouldn't be kosher. And it's a huge problem for us. So either you realize the hypocrisy that some of the groups that defend animal rights are are guilty of. And then you come and work with us and show that we can work together for animal welfare without religious freedom being infringed on. Or, there's a hypocrisy also in your discourse.
Right, but Yohan, I do want to make the point that you're asking for HANA and animal rights groups to be a little more flexible in their approach. Are Orthodox religious authorities also willing to be more flexible? She talked about things like bleeding out, hoisting, because the laws of kashrut do not allow for much latitude, at least as the way they're interpreted by some Orthodox sectors.
So first of all, I don't know that it is true. And second, it's not the case in Belgium. We're not talking about only postcard stunning. And three, even if that was the case, I wouldn't want any animal welfare group or even the state to interfere in religious affairs. This would be a violation of the separation of church and state. However, I do agree that within different Jewish traditions, there could be a rethinking of any number of aspects of religious laws. It has happened in the past. I'm not suggesting that it's impossible. I'm just suggesting that it's completely pointless. I mean, in this instance, what we need is to make good a situation that is completely unacceptable, not only for Orthodox Jews, but also for the groups of Jews that I represent, which include secular Jews, conservative Jews, and so on. So it's a question of it's not only a slippery slope. It's today the EU telling us we're not protecting the religious minorities as we used to, and the Belgium telling us your religious freedom is not as important as the last 13 seconds of an animal that only was there to be eaten.
All right. Well, this is a complex issue. I think there are no easy answers here, and I think this discussion and debate will continue, and we will see how it have to develop, certainly, in the coming years, especially in Europe. Yohan Benizri, president of the Belgian Federation of Jewish Organizations, and Hannah Schein, senior director of investigations of PETA. Thank you for joining us on i24 News.